Welcome back to TNT. Thank you for joining us as we continue discussing topics in our series on grief. Megan, I've written a lot in my book, which is Widows Are Warriors, a walk through the wilderness of widowhood. Please take a moment to order this. It's on Amazon. Just order it, send it to a friend, buy it for yourself if you want to understand what a widow might be going through. And I know that there's so much I've written about in this book, Megan. What would you like me to elaborate on today?
In the last video, we talked about broken heart syndrome.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess jumping off of that, can you talk about some of the differences between sudden loss and anticipated loss? How does that affect the grief and the stages of grief?
Mm-hmm. So there are several factors that will govern your grief journey. One is the nature of relationship in the loss, the quality of the relationship in the loss, the geographic proximity to the person that you've lost, the emotional bonding with the person you've lost.
Mm-hmm.
All of those determine how exactly you're going to grieve. There is another factor that determines how you grieve, and that is whether your loss was sudden or anticipated. To define that, sudden could be a suicide, an accident, or a heart attack.
Right.
Or any other health condition that resulted in sudden death. An anticipated loss would be where you've been given a timeline. So most of the time it would be cancer.
Any kind of
right?
terminal illness.
A terminal illness where you've been given a timeline and told this is how much time you have. And yes, there is grief that happens even while that person is alive, because I believe in anticipated loss, your grief begins the moment you've been given a timeline.
Right.
And you live every day knowing that there is a finite amount of time you have with this person.
Right.
The other aspect of anticipated loss is you're looking at a person deteriorating. So you grieve every day. You grieve every day the loss of yet another capability. You grieve every day the loss of another aspect of your relationship. So your grief process has really begun the moment you found out that your spouse has a terminal condition and there is now a finite amount of time that you have together. We all know we have a finite amount of time, but we don't know what that amount of time is.
Right.
We all know that we're not going to live forever, but we don't know when death will come knocking at our door. In anticipated loss, you've been told when to expect it. And I can't say that's good or bad or better or worse. I know that it can't be good knowing a timeline, and yet it gives you time to process your grief. I don't know that anything ever prepares you for the loss when it happens,
Right.
but aspects of your grief you start processing, and it's more gradual, and you get to deal with stuff in bits and pieces. Then you go to sudden loss and you didn't see it coming. You just got hit with a bulldozer. You're trying to figure out which side is up. Your world stopped turning and then it starts spinning in reverse. So it's crazy chaos. I don't even know that you can process grief under those circumstances.
You've compared it to preparing for a hurricane versus a tornado.
Absolutely. So, with a hurricane, you have people watching this little blip in the ocean long before it becomes anything. They predict what it might become. They predict what its path might be and where it'll be at a certain time and what its strength will be at that time. So depending on where you are located, you start watching it, anticipating. There's a certain amount of fear and apprehension, but there's also that hope that maybe you'll dodge the bullet on this one.
Right.
And then you watch it, and your preparations start amping up as you see, okay, we're getting closer to the time. This is coming here. So is that process fun? No, it's not. No, it's not at all. Because those 2 weeks that I've been watching this hurricane, I would have preferred to pretend like it didn't exist.
Right.
I would have loved to will it away, but I can't. And so ultimately, when the hurricane does hit, my pantry is full. My freezer has blocks of ice in it. I have sandbags if I need them, if I'm in a flooding zone. I have done everything I possibly can do to deal with it. And now it hits. I don't know what it's going to be like. I don't know what the destruction and the damage is going to be, how extensive. And I just know that I have to gear up. And when it hits me, we'll deal with whatever we have to deal with.
Right.
With a tornado, you don't know it's out there. You don't know it's coming your way because it does not develop days and weeks ahead of time.
Right. Sudden.
It is sudden, it's unexpected, it's powerful, it's unpredictable, and you can't tell what path. It can fly through your living room and leave the rest of your house intact.
Right.
There is nothing you could do mentally, emotionally, or physically to prepare for this tornado because you didn't see it coming. And even if you think everything in your life is in order in case a tornado hits, you still don't know it's going to hit.
Right.
And you don't know, you're just not prepared for it. And the devastation of the tornado may be bad enough to deal with. It may or may not be similar or worse or less than maybe a hurricane would have done. But you are a bigger mess because you were not prepared for it.
Right.
So before you can fix everything in your life and in your home, you got to take care of you. So that makes it complicated. I can't just fix everything in my house that's broken because I'm a mess.
Right.
So to me, the similarities in sudden death with the tornado and anticipated death being similar to a hurricane, that makes the most sense to me.
Does broken heart syndrome look different in these two cases, or is it just the timing of it? And maybe there is no black and white answer.
There isn't a black and white, but I would say, since broken heart syndrome is triggered by extreme high stress, you have a high risk in the tornado sudden situation of suffering from it very early in the grief process.
Right. Like in the immediate aftermath.
In the immediate, in the first 6 months, I know people who've landed in the hospital with strokes.
Right.
So because your blood pressure goes through the roof, everything's all right.
Right.
In anticipated death, you could still suffer from broken heart syndrome because your world has revolved around this person when they were ill. That was your sense of identity. That was your purpose. One of two things that happens when you finally come to this stage, you don't know what to do with yourself anymore. You've lost your sense of purpose. Or you decide, I need to step out and live my life and do something with it. Now, you might deal with guilt from feeling that.
Right.
So there's no win-win. No matter what you do, you're going to deal with something. So you could potentially, if you are stuck in your grief, even after anticipated loss, and you get anxiety and your stress levels are up and you can't manage the fallout, you could have suffered a massive financial loss with having a person with a prolonged illness.
Right.
And your income, which was already depleted by his illness, is now half by his death because you've lost his source of income, whether it be Social Security or whatever it might be.
There could be certain events that are triggered by the death, but you don't see the consequences until maybe a year later.
That's right.
At that moment, you could experience, because your cortisol levels go through the roof.
You absolutely could.
Right. Well, talking a little bit about how you navigate broken heart syndrome, and maybe you can talk a bit about your experience as well, but you talk about the importance of community. How has that helped you?
So this is a tricky situation, when it comes to community, you really need community because the isolation is not good for you.
Mm.
So you need to be surrounded by people who understand you and nurture you. And yet, your place of grief keeps you in this deep, dark hole that you can't handle being around people. You can't handle a lot of stimulus.
Right.
You can't handle being around fun and happy because it just doesn't make sense to you. You can't process it, and it is almost interpreted as a violation of your grief. I remember looking out and watching people just go to work, kids laughing, kids going to school, couples walking hand in hand, and I just thought, do you guys not get it?
Mm.
Do you not get it? My world has come to an end. How is it you can't see
Yeah.
that?
I remember
How is it
feeling
you
that.
can't see that?
Even the day that Dad died, I remember people's lives go on.
Yeah.
Somebody's birthday, one of my good friends, her birthday's on the same day,
Yep.
and she feels terrible. You know, she's like, I know this is a hard day for you, and I say, well, I can still absolutely celebrate you, but it's definitely, it happens. Babies are born, marriages happen, exciting life things happen on the same day that you just lost one of the most important people, and it kind of shatters your worldview or your perspective a little bit when you're in that in that moment you're experiencing intense grief, and you're like, it almost feels like other people don't care,
Right.
and it's not the case.
Right.
And I know even for me, I've had many friends whose parents have died since, and I know even for me, I find out and I pray with them, I reach out to them, and then my life does go on.
It does.
Yeah.
But you know, because you've been there, you know that they are occupying a very dark space.
Right.
Now, Super Bowl Sunday will always,
Mm.
for us, be a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
Because that's the day we lost Dad.
Yeah.
And Super Bowl Sunday is on a different date on the calendar.
Right.
But it's a trigger and it's a reminder of the day that we had a house full of people to be with us on the day we lost Dad. And we turned on the Super Bowl and decided that we were going to try and watch it with 30 people in the house and just try to get through that day.
Yeah.
I remember people thinking we were having a Super Bowl party at our house.
Really?
That did not realize that we had lost Dad just a few hours ago.
Mm.
So, broken heart syndrome is a process that not everyone experiences that, but I can tell you I came close to it.
Mm.
That's how I knew. There were times when I was like, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to make it. I just knew I was going to die because I knew how I felt on a daily basis. Community is so important. Like, we enjoyed the presence of all those people in our home that day just because it brings you comfort. However, you want that community to be tailored to where you are in your grief and to understand your grief journey. Not everyone has the capacity to do that. Not anyone has the desire to be in that sad place that you're in.
Yeah, I think one of the hardest things too is it's a nice distraction in some ways, but it can be overwhelming. Like I know I just escaped into my room and shut the door and just burst out crying.
Yep, because one is your loss feels like it's being trivialized.
Right.
Secondly is the stimulus is too much.
Right.
Your brain and your mind can only handle this much. I know that I couldn't have conversations with people anymore. I'm sorry, there's no room in my brain for you. There really isn't.
Right. And the reality of it is that grief is uncomfortable. Death is uncomfortable.
Nobody wants to be around it.
You see, you have all of these people and they're trying to do everything they can to keep you from crying and to keep you from grieving. And it was almost like, I just need to get it out.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely it's like a fine line, I think. And it's maybe different for every person. Some people may really welcome that distraction.
Right.
And for other people like me, it was like, no, I need to just get it out of my system.
And that's why I say grief is a very unique journey. It's very unique to you. Try as much as you can not to isolate yourself, but be selective in who you have community with, because they need to be people that help you in the journey, not impede you, not people who tell you you need to be over it, not people who tell you they're tired of being around your grief. If they're tired of being around your grief, while you can understand that, I tell them I'm tired of being around my grief and I don't have a choice.
Yeah, and always be
You know,
wary of people who say you're either grieving too much or not grieving enough.
enough, yeah. There is no right thing in the eyes of anybody else. And oftentimes you'll wonder how you should be doing things differently. And some days you will do it one way and other days you'll do it another. So know that nobody likes grief. Nobody hates it more than the person who's going through it. So be gracious, be kind, and be present, even if it's in small doses. That is my suggestion to people who have a grieving person in their lives. I thank you very much, Megan. It's been wonderful just being able to even revisit some of our grief. We don't do that much because it's not easy. But here we are, we have a moment, and I'm happy we were able to do that. Don't forget to order my book on Amazon, Widows Are Warriors, written by Cynthia Mascarenhas. And we are so glad you joined us. Stay tuned, subscribe to our channel, and get ready for our next video on TNT.